DJ Academics just dropped what looks like proof Pooh Shiesty got locked back up, just months after his federal release. Did he really violate parole with guns and lies to his PO? Or did the feds reveal something nobody saw coming? I've got the full story. Let's get into it. The day the streets thought Shiesty got knocked again. The whole internet went crazy on January 12, 2026, when DJ Academics dropped what looked like straight facts that had the whole rap game shook. At exactly 7:21 p.m. GMT, AK posted a screenshot to his massive following that seemed to confirm what everybody was scared of. Memphis rapper Pooh Shiesty, who just got out the feds and was back on his feet, was allegedly locked back up. The post went absolutely viral, over 9,600 likes, 700 replies, and 1.5 million views in just hours, and it had a screenshot straight from the Federal Bureau of Prisons inmate locator. The details hit different. Name: Lontrell D. Williams. Register number: 524-90509. Age: 26. Release date: 04/11/2026. Location: RRM Dallas. For anybody who know how the feds move, seeing that RRM spot with a release date almost 3 months out looked like proof that Pooh Shiesty violated his supervised release and got snatched back up. The comment section went nuts immediately. Fans was in the replies clowning, talking about how bro gotta drop first day out and last day out back to back. Others started playing detective, pointing to bars in his comeback track where he was spitting about having a fully ARP still sitting on the counter, gun references that suddenly seemed less like cap and more like self-snitching on them parole violations. But real talk, the rumors actually started popping off a day earlier on January 11th, 2026, during a live stream with Pooh Shiesty's homie Ben Dadon. During the stream, somebody called in, talking about some police raid going down, and even though they ain't say Shiesty's name directly, everybody who was watching immediately connected the dots. The whispers started spreading through group chats and Twitter. Did the feds really pull up on Pooh Shiesty? Did 12 run up in his spot? Was bro already violating his release terms? To understand why this rumor hit so hard and felt so real, you gotta know who Pooh Shiesty really is. Born Lontrell Donnell Williams Jr. on November 8, 1999 in Memphis, Tennessee, Shorty came up out of South Memphis's Cane Creek Apartments, one of them neighborhoods where you learn the street code before you learn algebra. His pops was a rapper too and founded Mob Ties Records, so Baby Shiesty was around the music and the streets from day one. This Memphis, where being a rapper and being in them trenches was basically the same thing. Everything changed when Gucci Mane signed him to 1017 Records in 2020. Then November 2020 came around and Back in Blood, featuring Lil Durk, absolutely took off. That joint racked up over 200 million views on YouTube, hit number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100, and became one of them songs you couldn't escape. Every party, every whip, every cookout. Them opening bars was the soundtrack. His debut tape Shiesty Season dropped in February 2021 and debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200, eventually going platinum. Collabs with Moneybagg Yo, 21 Savage, and ESTG had streams hitting over 1 billion across all platforms by mid-2021. Bro wasn't just hot, he was on fire. A straight-up superstar whose music was speaking to millions who saw their own struggle in his bars. But just like so many street rappers before him, legal trouble caught up right when he was blowing up. In October 2020, what was supposed to be a simple transaction, trading sneakers and weed at a Bay Harbor Islands, Florida hotel, turned into a whole shooting. According to the feds, Pooh Shiesty allegedly hit a dude in the butt with a Draco. Security footage caught him hopping out a McLaren with cash literally falling out his pockets, evidence that would eventually build the whole federal case. Then June 2021 came, and another shooting went down at King of Diamonds, one of Miami's most notorious strip clubs. His defense lawyers tried arguing it was an accident. Check out how it played out in court.
There's no intent shown in that document. There's no words that were said. There's no pointing of the firearm at anyone. Essentially, what the document says and what the witnesses said on that day is that the defendant was being escorted out of the club. He reached for his pockets, looking for money in his pockets. A weapon was pulled and it was fired at the ground. And after it was fired at the ground, allegedly the ricochet or whatever happened was one of the either security guards or an employee of the club was struck in his ankle.
But the prosecutors wasn't trying to hear all that. They painted a totally different picture.
What happened here was the defendant was angry because the victim in this case, who was a security guard, told him to put away his gun. He then grew angry. He pointed the gun at him and shot him. The victim specifically states in the arrest warrant that he had to move out of the way. He was directly shooting at him. The only reason he got shot in the ankle was because he jumped out of the way at the last minute. This happened in front of a club full of people. There's video of the defendant with the gun in his hand.
By July 2021, the feds came down hard with indictments including conspiracy to commit Hobbs Act robbery and firearms conspiracy, facing life. If he took it to trial, Pooh Shiesty copped a plea to firearms conspiracy in January 2022. On April 20th, 2022, the judge handed him 63 months. That's over 5 years in the feds. His lawyer said the government wanted 97 months, but the judge showed some leniency after looking at everything. He did his bid at FCI Miami and FCI Butner Low in North Carolina. His release date kept getting pushed up because of good behavior credits under the First Step Act from August 2026 to April 25th, 2026, and finally landing at April 11th, 2026. Then, October 7th, 2025 came, the day everybody been waiting for. Shiesty got released early to community confinement after doing about 3 years. The videos that dropped showed him turning up with K Carbon and Big 30, flexing bands, living that life he couldn't touch while he was locked down. He dropped First Day Out, FDO, and that joint hit #1 on Billboard's Hot R&B hip-hop songs, proving his fan base was still riding for him heavy, but red flags started popping up quick. In December 2025, during a Ben Da Don live stream, Pooh Shiesty went off on a female fan who didn't know who Lil Durk was, the same Durk who blessed him with that Back in Blood feature that put him on. That moment had people calling him out for how he came at Shorty, though his fans defended it, saying he was just showing loyalty to Durk. But way more troubling was other moments that suggested he might be playing with fire on his supervised release. In one clip that really got people talking, viewers believed they caught Pooh Shiesty on the phone with his PO, claiming he was at the crib when the visuals suggested otherwise. The commentary was brutal. People were saying bro was straight up lying multiple times to his parole officer, that he was throwing away his freedom and acting reckless. Federal supervised release ain't like regular probation. The feds don't play, the oversight is strict, and if you violate, they snatch you back up quick. Lying to your PO is itself a violation that can land you right back in a cell. So when that BOP screenshot dropped on January 12th, showing Pooh Shiesty at RRM Dallas with an April 2026 release date, it didn't feel like rumors or cap. It felt like it was bound to happen. The pattern seemed obvious. Young rapper gets out the feds, immediately goes back to moving reckless, catches a violation, ends up back in custody. It's a story that's played out in hip-hop more times than anybody can count. The receipts, the violations, and the real tea. The internet detectives came with all the smoke, going through every frame of every video Pooh Shiesty posted since October like they was building a case. And what they found seemed to back up what everybody feared, that bro had straight up violated his supervised release in the worst ways possible. Start with the most damning evidence, his own bars. In First Day Out, the song that was supposed to celebrate his freedom, Pooh Shiesty was out here rapping about having a fully ARP still sitting on the counter, basically talking about owning a fully automatic assault rifle. Now, when you on federal supervised release for gun charges, having any strap, let alone a fully auto, is the fastest way to get violated and sent back to the box. The fact that he was seemingly bragging about this on a #1 Billboard hit was either the boldest move ever or just straight stupid. But the lyrics was just the tip of the iceberg. Them live streams from December 2025 and early January 2026 had what looked like straight smoking gun evidence. That moment where Pooh Shiesty seemed to be on the phone with his PO, while clearly not being where he said he was, got analyzed by everybody. Federal supervised release don't play games. When your parole officer calls to verify where you at, and you supposed to be at your approved spot, you better be exactly there. They got ankle monitors, they got technology to track you, and lying to a federal officer is itself a violation that gets you snatched immediately. Beyond that phone call, video showed Pooh Shiesty in different spots, flashing racks, hanging with the homies, living a lifestyle that seemed way off from what you're supposed to be doing on federal supervision. That December 2025 incident where he threatened the fan wasn't just bad optics. It could potentially be used as evidence showing he got aggression issues and ain't successfully transitioning back to society, which is literally the whole point of supervised release. Then you got the gun references throughout his content. While none of the videos showed Pooh Shiesty directly holding straps, that would be too obvious. People with eagle eyes pointed out what looked like weapons in the background of shots, references to hidden crates in his content, and imagery suggesting he was still around guns, despite his conviction. Analysis of FDO lyrics showed how he was mixing threats with wordplay, spitting bars like "them teardrops played out, go, get your favorite bullet on your face," which could be seen as promoting violence. All this evidence stacked up, the bars, the live streams, the location violations, the aggressive behavior, the gun references, created what seemed like an open and shut case. That's exactly why, when the January 12th BOP screenshot dropped, everybody believed it instantly. It wasn't that people people wanted to see bro fail, the receipts just seemed overwhelming. Posts from RF House TV2 to Daily Loud was spreading the alleged rearrest news, and the engagement was crazy because the story just made sense. But here's where everything flips, a plot twist nobody saw coming. Because as it turns out, damn near everything the internet believed about Pooh Shiesty getting knocked again on January 12, 2026 was straight cap. The real story started coming out later that same day at 8:33 p.m. GMT when academics posted an update that completely changed the whole narrative. His label reached out with clarification that flipped the script entirely. Pooh Shiesty had not been rearrested. He had not violated his supervised release. He was not back in federal custody catching new charges. So what was really going on? To understand, you gotta know how the federal prison system's residential reentry management program actually works. RRM offices, which operate under the Federal Bureau of Prisons, handle the transition for inmates moving from being locked up to community supervision. This includes halfway houses and home confinement programs. And here's the crucial part everybody missed. People in these programs are still technically in BOP custody, even though they living in the community. When Pooh Shiesty got released early on October 7, 2025, he wasn't released to complete freedom like most people think. He was released to what's called community confinement, basically serving the rest of his sentence under home confinement with an ankle monitor, strict check-ins, and RRM Dallas watching his every move. That April 11, 2026 date that everybody thought meant he got knocked again was actually set months ago. It's just when his full sentence, including supervised release, ends. In other words, that BOP listing never changed. It'd been showing RRM Dallas and that April 2026 date since his October release to home confinement, but nobody was checking the database regular enough to know this. The system lists everybody on home confinement under their supervising RRM office because technically they still in federal custody. They can get sent back to prison at any moment if they violate. They got restrictions on where they can go, and they still serving time, just doing it outside the walls. Pooh Shiesty himself clapped back on Instagram, dropping a comment that said, "Can't tell the internet dumbass nothing," which was a justified way to dismiss the whole mess. XXL magazine confirmed with people close to the situation that he's still in Dallas under a halfway house program until April 11th, 2026, with no new charges or violations whatsoever. That supposed raid from Ben Don's livestream either completely made up, misunderstood, or was about somebody else, but definitely not proof that Pooh Shiesty got taken back in. But hold up, what about all that evidence everybody was so sure proved he was violating? This is where we gotta confront some uncomfortable truths about how we consume content and build narratives that seem solid but are really built on assumptions and misunderstandings. That fully ARP still sitting on the counter bar, that's just a rap lyric, artistic expression protected by the First Amendment. Unless prosecutors can prove he actually got that weapon, which they apparently can't or haven't, lyrics by themselves ain't enough evidence. Rappers say violent and illegal stuff in songs all the time. It's literally part of the culture. While there's real debates about when bars can be used as evidence in court, one line in a song ain't grounds for violating supervised release. That live stream where it looked like he was lying to his PO, when you look closer, the situation was way more unclear than them viral clips suggested. Without hearing the full conversation, without knowing the exact terms of his supervised release, and without official word from the BOP that any violation happened, what looked like a smoking gun might have been a misunderstanding or maybe even within the rules of where he was allowed to move. The aggressive behavior toward the fan, while it definitely wasn't cool and rightfully drew criticism, it wasn't illegal, and more importantly, it wasn't a violation of his release terms unless his conditions specifically said he couldn't be aggressive in his speech, which would actually run into First Amendment issues. Being rude or even disrespectful ain't a federal crime. What we left with is a perfect example of how social media hysteria develops in real time. A misunderstood moment on a live stream creates speculation. That mixes with what people already know about a rapper's legal troubles and concerning behavior caught on camera. A screenshot from an official Bureau of Prisons database seems to confirm everybody's worst fears. A media personality with millions of followers shares it without full verification. The story goes viral with millions of views, and suddenly it becomes accepted as facts, except it wasn't facts at all. It was a bunch of misunderstandings, assumptions, and incomplete information that created a false narrative hundreds of thousands of people believed because it fit what they expected to happen.
And what I realized is that these cliques of rappers, because right now it's weird in Atlanta, it's getting weird for everybody else. Why? That's all their homies. Like that's the cool crew. So I thought that when the whole F the streets thing was, kind of transpiring and going around social media and hip hop, you know who I felt should be the last person that jumped in on that? Pooh Shiesty. You just came out of jail and you're saying that you're back on the streets and you're bringing back the streets damn near.
This breakdown from academics, recorded before all the rearrest rumors even started, gives context for why people were so ready to believe Pooh Shiesty violated. There was already this vibe that he was moving inconsistent, saying contradictory things, and struggling to balance the complex requirements of supervised release while trying to keep his street credibility intact. What this really means for the culture. If Pooh Shiesty wasn't actually rearrested, if this whole controversy was really just based on people not understanding how federal supervision works, why does any of this matter? The answer is in what this whole situation reveals about the impossible position street rappers find themselves in when trying to navigate supervised release, the role social media plays in building up and tearing down careers, and the deeper conflicts within hip-hop between keeping it real, making money, and staying out of prison. Let's start with the core contradiction academics pointed out. Here you got a young dude who dropped arguably the hardest, most authentically street comeback track of 2025, a song that hit #1 specifically because it captured that raw Memphis trap energy everybody been missing. First Day Out wasn't no watered down, radio-friendly track trying to appeal to suburban kids. It was Pooh Shiesty at his most aggressive, most defiant, most unapologetically from the trenches. But at the exact same time, you had this whole the streets wave spreading through hip-hop, especially after what happened with Young Thug's case that forced the whole industry to face some uncomfortable questions about loyalty, snitching, and what keeping it street really costs you. Pooh Shiesty had engaged with this conversation too, sometimes seeming like he wanted to leave that life behind, while his music and moves suggested the complete opposite. Academics captured this contradiction perfectly.
If you're saying f the streets, now you are the streets. You're saying f yourself, right? Chat, again, this is why I'm looking at the street news and I'm like, why are they saying this shit online? I am the streets. 2 weeks ago, the streets. I see what you did there. I see what you did there. But exactly.
This contradiction ain't unique to Pooh Shiesty. It's everywhere in street rap, and it's especially tough when you're dealing with artists on supervised release who are literally being watched by federal authorities while simultaneously trying to maintain the street credibility that makes their music commercially successful. Think about the impossible balancing act. You gotta seem authentic enough that your core fan base believes you still the same person who made the music they love, but you also gotta avoid moving so reckless that you violate your release conditions. You gotta project strength and fearlessness in your bars, but you also gotta show remorse and rehabilitation to satisfy the POs and judges who can send you back at any moment.
Most of the things that street niggas abide by or adhere to or do not make sense. So this idea of no snitching, yeah, it sounds great. It's like a rule, you know? This, if don't do this. All right, cool, sounds like a good rule. Until you realize that the majority of people have ignored majority of street dudes.
Academics making a real point here about how street codes that might make sense when you in the hood become impossible to maintain when exposed to public scrutiny and legal consequences. The problem is social media done fundamentally changed the game. 20 years ago, a rapper could do their bid, come home, and navigate their supervised release relatively low-key. Now, every live stream is a potential violation waiting to happen. Every bar you spit is evidence that can get screenshotted and sent to your PO. Every Instagram story showing where you at or who you with becomes part of your permanent record that can be used against you. That December incident where Pooh Shiesty went at the fan wasn't just caught on camera. It got recorded, clipped, shared across every platform, analyzed in detail, and turned into narrative evidence suggesting he was violating his release. In previous eras, that moment might have been forgotten in a few days. Now it's permanent content that follows him around forever. This brings up bigger questions about authenticity in hip-hop and whether the street rapper as we know them can even exist in today's media landscape, especially after doing time. The exact things that make street rap compelling, the rawness, the unfiltered aggression, the references to real violence and criminal activity, are the same things that create legal problems for artists trying to rebuild their lives after serving time. But if they tone it down too much, clean up their image too dramatically, they risk losing the audience that made them famous in the first place. Look at how fans reacted to the idea that Pooh Shiesty might have said, the streets. The backlash was immediate and harsh, with people calling him a hypocrite for supposedly turning his back on the lifestyle his music celebrated. But what's the alternative? Should he double down on street activity, even though he knows it could send him back to prison? Should he keep surrounding himself with guns and violence and risk everything he's worked for? The expectation seems to be that street rappers should somehow stay authentically dangerous, while magically avoiding the consequences that come with actual danger. Back in Blood is the perfect example. That song's massive success came from its unflinching portrayal of street violence, with bars that explicitly glorified revenge and retaliation. Killed your mans, you keep on talking, better get that shit in blood ain't no metaphor. It's a direct statement about street justice that resonated with millions specifically because it felt authentic, real, dangerous. But that same authenticity made the prosecutors' jobs easier when building their case. The music became evidence. Street credibility became criminal conspiracy. Now let's talk about the media's role in all this, because that January 12th false alarm wasn't just about one bad post from academics. It was about how fast misinformation spreads when it confirms what people already think. The initial post got 1.5 million views before the correction came out. And even after academics updated his post, a lot of people never saw the correction. They just remember seeing that Pooh Shiesty was back in custody, and that false memory becomes their reality. There's also this uncomfortable truth that conflict and failure get way more engagement than success and stability. A post announcing a rearrest gets exponentially more attention than a post explaining the nuances of RRM oversight and community confinement programs. Drama sells. Controversy drives clicks and views. In a media ecosystem where attention equals money, there's a perverse incentive to jump on breaking news, even potentially false breaking news, rather than waiting for full verification that might mean you miss out on the viral moment. Think about how this all played out. Bendadon's live stream has some ambiguous moment that could be interpreted multiple ways. Instead of treating it as unclear, blogs and social media accounts immediately run with the most dramatic interpretation. Then somebody notices the BOP listing, which hadn't actually changed, and treats it as confirmation. Academics amplifies it to his millions of followers. Other accounts repost and add their commentary. Within hours, it's accepted as established facts across hip-hop media. Then when the truth comes out, it gets a fraction of the attention because rapper isn't actually in jail, doesn't have the same viral potential as rapper back in jail after just 3 months.
Street niggas go on podcasts to argue and debate what they're, yeah, I'm gonna tell you why I ran down on him. It's usually a logical thing. But they go online to explain themselves that the consumers of the internet could understand it. Here's the thing. You watching me here, and the reason, and most people who are not involved in the streets that watch stuff, they're logical people.
This observation is crucial because it points out the fundamental disconnect. Street culture operates on emotional, often illogical principles that make perfect sense within that specific context, but seem absolutely crazy when put under public scrutiny by people who don't come from that background. When you try to explain street logic to internet audiences who never lived that life, it inevitably falls apart under examination. But street rappers keep trying to explain themselves, keep trying to maintain their credibility, keep trying to defend their choices to audiences that will never fully understand where they're coming from. This creates a vicious cycle where artists like Pooh Shiesty are damned if they do and damned if they don't. Stay authentically street, you risk legal consequences and get accused of being self-destructive and throwing your life away. Clean up your image, you lose credibility and get accused of being fake and switching up. Try to find some middle ground, you get called a hypocrite whose words and actions don't line up. There's literally no winning move here, especially when every action you take is being broadcast in real time to audiences who got strong opinions about how you should live your life despite having zero understanding of the pressures and constraints you operating under. His controversial bars continue fueling debates about whether he's being reckless or just maintaining his artistic voice. Lines like, "Them teardrops played out, go get your favorite bullet on your face," can be read as either creative wordplay or as encouraging violence, depending on who's interpreting it. The diss aimed at Bronny James, "Yo daddy a killer, but you ain't, you just like Bronny James," sparked backlash for dragging a non-rapper into hip-hop beef. But from Pooh Shiesty's perspective, it's just clever bar work using pop culture references that everybody knows. Pooh Shiesty is navigating an impossible situation with essentially no good options available. He's under federal supervision until April 11th, 2026, which means every single move he makes is potentially being monitored and evaluated by authorities who got the power to send him back to prison if they decide he's not complying with his conditions. But at the same time, he's a commercial artist whose career depends on staying relevant in a rap game that moves at lightning speed and quickly forgets about artists who don't stay visible and controversial. And he's a street rapper whose credibility depends on projecting a certain image that may be fundamentally incompatible with the requirements of successful supervised release.
You just dropped one of the hardest street songs. It's the highest debut rap song in the last couple of months. You're doing good, brother. Don't speak on it. Even if, like, you, again, here's the problem. You could stand in solidarity, and this is why, like, the rap game confuses me.
Academics is absolutely right here. The smart play would be to stay quiet, keep making music, and avoid getting dragged into debates about street politics and loyalty that can only hurt you in the end. But when your entire career is built on being outspoken, on being authentically from the streets, on being somebody who doesn't back down or stay silent when challenged, how do you suddenly become calculated and strategic? It's a fundamental identity shift that's way easier to prescribe from the outside than it is to actually execute when it's your life, your career, and your freedom on the line. What makes this whole situation particularly fascinating is that it exposes the huge gap between how the federal prison system actually operates and how the general public thinks it works. The confusion over RRM Dallas and community confinement versus actual rearrest reveals widespread ignorance about how supervised release programs function. Most people got no idea that somebody can be released from prison while still technically being in BOP custody, still having their movements heavily restricted, still being subject to immediate return to full incarceration if they violate any conditions. This lack of understanding creates the perfect environment for misinformation to spread unchecked. Looking ahead, the real question is whether Pooh Shiesty can actually make it to April 11, 2026 without catching any real violations, and what his career gonna look like on the other side when he's finally completely free. First Day Out proved he still got major commercial appeal and a hungry audience waiting for new music. But can he maintain that momentum while navigating all the restrictions that come with federal supervision? Can he avoid the kind of behavior, whether real or just perceived, that fuels rumors about violations and rearrests? And even if he makes it through these final months successfully, what long-term lessons will he and other street rappers learn from this whole experience? The January 2026 false alarm might ultimately serve as a wake-up call, a harsh reminder that the internet is always watching, always waiting, always ready to believe the worst based on incomplete information and assumptions. Pooh Shiesty's comment that you can't tell the internet dumbass nothing reflects both frustration and resignation, the reality that no amount of explaining or clarifying will completely overcome the power of a viral narrative, even when that narrative is completely false. As we watch his story continue to unfold over these final months of supervision, we're really watching a much larger drama about hip-hop authenticity, the federal criminal justice system, social media's role in shaping and distorting reality, and whether it's even possible to be a successful street rapper in an era where everything is documented, everything is analyzed, and everything can be weaponized against you. The streets is watching, the feds is definitely watching, the internet is absolutely watching, and Pooh Shiesty is caught right in the middle, trying to be authentic enough to maintain his career while being careful enough to maintain his freedom. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.